Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Duelist, a Korean action drama comedy from 2005 that stars Ha Ji-won, Ahn Sung-ki, Gang Dong-won, and it was directed by Lee Myung-se. The film opens with a story that's narrated by a low-class metalsmith in a tavern in Joseon-era Korea. The scene then cuts to a street circus in which an elegant masked swordmaster, played by Gang Dong-won, fascinates his marketplace audience. An undercover detective, played by Ahn Sung-ki, and his protege, played by Ha Ji-won, are tracking down a money-counterfeit gang when the masked swordmaster ends his show by killing a government official. Now, you probably cannot tell from that plot synopsis, but the opening series of events are very goofy. They're very goofy in terms of tone. There's definitely some exaggerated acting on display, as well as that step framing technique that I've talked about before, and tons of slow motion, as well as some sped up, dare I say, Benny Hill style photography at times. A little bit later, there's a chase scene involving a bag of coins that seems to be modeled after a modern rugby game, and most of these moments have a very lighthearted, energetic presentation. However, none of this should be that surprising if you're familiar with the director. And I recently reviewed Nowhere to Hide and M on this channel, both of which have a healthy dose of quirky humor that's infused within them. And Duelist is similar in that regard, and it does work well enough. One reason for this is Ha Ji-won, who absolutely chews the scenery in a very charismatic and endearing performance. She makes a lot of silly faces in this movie and gives the film a jovial mood, but she's likable, good actress. Ahn Sung-ki's acting is the complete opposite, the opposite end of the spectrum from what he did in Nowhere to Hide, because he talks a lot here, pretty goofy himself at times, and very expressionistic in his performance. So both leads, I think, really take the film up a notch in terms of just creating an entertaining and fun experience. Gang Dong-won is extremely reserved here. I tend to prefer his more outgoing villain performances, but his character in The Duelist is rather mysterious, so the acting works. But yeah, the actors do a good job here. Storytelling, very thin in this, all right, which is kind of a problem. The film is close to 2 hours long, and the storytelling's a little bit weak, and that's most evident when the tone shifts to being more serious later on. It relies on a lot of melancholy, a little bit of sadness and stuff like that. Final half hour ditches the humor almost entirely and goes for more of artsy-fartsy dramaticism. And I think the humor-based events work better. But, it's still pretty good. This is essentially a character interaction film with lots of style. Alright, so don't expect a deep plot or even deep character work. Interaction and style is what they're going for. The editing and the scene transitions are creative and fun, certainly wild enough to be visually entertaining and interesting. Nice use of color as well. Another negative I have with this, and I think I've mentioned this before on my channel, is that the sword fights in this movie, not satisfying for fans of action cinema. They go for an artsy-fartsy method of sword fighting, so you never clearly see the sword strikes, or almost barely ever. And in some cases, you only see the after effects. And this is executed using a lot of jump cuts, obstacles that are blocking the camera. One sword fight happens in the dark where you can barely see anything. And I really dislike that type of action presentation. No exception here. You basically need to go into this not expecting an action film in order to enjoy it at all. Because if you're expecting well-choreographed, clearly shot fighting, you'll probably be infuriated watching this. The action is used as a supplement to the character interaction. It's not meant to provide, action set pieces. So, in a prior video, I think I mentioned that I absolutely hated this movie the first time I saw it years ago, similar to my reaction to Nowhere to Hide. But after revisiting this, I do think that, when you take the positives and the negatives, it's a slight net positive. I think that it's moderately enjoyable despite its flaws due to the performances and the actors and its style. It's even though it's not like the story's not that great, character depth isn't that great, it held my interest pretty well. So you got to give it credit for that. I would cautiously recommend it. I was probably a bit too hard on it over the years after watching it the first time. However, this director, Lee Myung-se, very odd panache to his movies. It's hard to nail down his films and describe them. So it's a different experience with this guy, which is, it's a good thing. But again, if you want an introduction to this director, definitely I recommend M as your first excursion, because I think it's his best film from what I've seen. And then move on to his other stuff if you like his style. And as always, folks, I'll see you next time.